this again. Without a doubt, the question I receive more than anything is, how have I not become Catholic or Orthodox? And I get it. Look, many people, when they become engrossed in church history, when they become interested in these things, they quickly find themselves in Orthodox catechumen, or they're in Catholic RCIA. They're en route to conversion soon enough. They've found Rome sweet home, or they've gone across the Bosphorus to Orthodoxy. And that's people who have just gotten to read a lot or go to some services. I, on the other hand, have gotten to talk to some of the best apologists in the world for these traditions, and still, somehow, I'm Protestant. So what gives? Well, I want to do a little myth busting first, because there's two common claims that I see put out there for perhaps why I haven't converted, and I want to maybe just put these to rest before we get to the real reason. The first one that I see sometimes, and it's kind of funny to me on the other side, I guess they both are, is that it's really because of the money. That I haven't converted because of some type of financial reason. And the argument typically goes something like, well, I've built my channel based on being this third-party neutral observer. Protestant goes to Orthodox liturgy, or Protestant goes to Catholic monastery kind of thing. And then it just wouldn't hit the same if I ever converted. And so I would lose kind of my viewership, and therefore I haven't converted because, well, if you just follow the money, I want to keep making money doing this. Okay, there's a couple of reasons why this isn't true. First, I would like to say that I don't think I'm making this decision based on money at all. I have much respect for it, but I guess we can break this down further if that doesn't suffice. The first would be that, one, I really don't make much money doing this. My wife and I both work full time. I really appreciate the people who watch, give, my sponsorships, all of those things. It helps, right? But we're not depending on this for our livelihood, and so if it went away, it wouldn't be a very big problem. And so that's not a hang up in that sense. The second reason is, if you think about it, I think I would actually make a lot more money if I converted. It's harder to drum up sponsorships or patrons when you're kind of a third party. People don't know what to categorize you as. It's much easier to give to or sponsor a channel that has a clear point of view that kind of pushes content towards one base, maybe is even polemical. That just tends to do better. So hopefully we understand that it's not because of the money. The second reason that I see put out sometimes, and this one is quite funny to me too, is actually a theory that I have already converted, and I just haven't told anyone. I think this often comes from people who only watch my Catholic videos, who are maybe Catholic, or who only watch my Orthodox videos and are Orthodox because that's what the algorithm gives them. And they just assume, because I'm talking about these all the time, and that I have some opinions that might be kind of amenable to these positions, that I've actually already done it, and I'm just hiding it. That's not true. I suppose I wouldn't be obligated to tell you, but I do think that I would. And I will say, though, just along those lines, people aren't entirely wrong in thinking that if I did convert, I wouldn't become this instant apologist for that position. That is absolutely true. I have no interest in becoming an apologist, so if I ever did convert to Catholicism or Orthodoxy, I hate to disappoint you, but I have no intention of becoming an apologist. That's just not that interesting to me. So on to the real reason why I haven't converted. I know this is going to be kind of disappointing, but I don't know any other way to put it. Besides, I haven't been convinced. Let me break that down a little. In atheist-theist dialogues, there's this term called non-resistant non-believer. And whether you find that true for that or whatnot, and whether that counts as an argument against God, is kind of beside the point right now. I find it just categorically helpful in that I often think of myself as this kind of non-resistant non-convert. What I mean by that is I'm not resistant to the idea of converting. In fact, in many ways, I'd prefer to be Catholic or Orthodox. I love the liturgies. I love the culture around it, the art, the centuries of tradition. I love the depth in the theology. I love so much of it. I love the devotional life. I've taken on a lot of practices from these traditions. I don't have any qualms really with converting. I just haven't been intellectually convinced. I suppose when I started this journey, I had what was maybe a naive hope, but this hope that I could just follow the truth where it led, and that it would be obvious. That if I just read enough books, if I talked to enough smart people, well then conversion would just follow because, click, it would change, it would be obvious, ingest enough information, and boom, you become Catholic or Orthodox. I mean, that's what people made it sound like. I just haven't found that to be the case. And when you break it down, it's a really interesting thing of how do you become convinced? Like, how do you change one's mind? It's kind of a mysterious thing. Like, eventually something just makes sense to you. You say, okay, yeah, I think that's true. I will say it might be true that there were times when I was resistant, if I want to be kind of intellectually fair. I think when I was in college, there were factors for being resistant, namely that like being Protestant was a graduation requirement, and I was getting ready to get married, and I was confused. There's a lot of stuff going on. Like, maybe I had some resistance then. But now, like, my career's not riding on this. I'm not a Protestant pastor. There's just not a lot of resistance from me. I would prefer to have this all be done and over with and just convert. But why haven't I? Well, you see, here are the things that make it complicated, in my opinion. If it was simply the case that it was a question of which tradition is preferable, which tradition is going to help lead you deeper into your faith, which I think is one way of approaching this, for the record, I think it would be a lot easier for me, a lot more simple. But the problem is that I do think there are kind of cognitive, fact-based requirements or claims that these traditions make, and that's where it becomes difficult for me. It's an internal consistency matter. Let me explain that. So, if, for instance, the bodily assumption of Mary on the Catholic side, and to a large extent on the Orthodox side, if this was just like a pious option to believe or a theological concept, that would be easy enough for me. But the fact is, in dogmatizing this and making it a kind of required belief, it's not just that this is a good thing to believe or a potential thing or a pious thing or a theological concept, but that it's a historical event. And for me, once you make that move and make that a dogma, well, then all of a sudden it has this burden of proof as a historical, factual claim. And it's just one that I don't find the evidence rises to that bar. I find the attestation to be fairly late. I find there to be some contrary attestation. I don't find the arguments in favor of it all that convincing, like the relics argument and things like that. And so to me, it just seems like a fairly bold claim that historically is difficult for me to say, like, I believe that. And I feel like it would be just disingenuous to convert and say, like, yeah, I sign off on these things, but I don't actually know if they happened. And I'm not really all that convinced. But sure, like that doesn't seem fair to me, like to the tradition. I think if you convert, you should be converting not just your heart, but like your head as well. And that just hasn't happened for me in that way. Or like the papacy. If it was that this is a logical way to run the church, this is a potentially good way, it's a way that's been done for a long time, it's a way that's fine and maybe helpful. Okay, that would be one thing. But when the claim becomes that there's been an unbroken line of succession from Peter, of bishops of Rome, and that the church has always believed this and at all time, and that it's had kind of infallibility and universal jurisdiction, whether it's been kind of latent or active in that way, like it just becomes more difficult, because I think even sorting out that there's a bishop in Rome for the first, 150 years is a difficult thing to claim. But once we make that a dogma and we make kind of a historical claim and not just a claim of like expediency that this is a good thing or a fitting thing, again, we have this burden of proof that I haven't been able to get over. Like, I'm just not seeing it if this is going to be a dogma at that level. On the Orthodox side, I think the closest thing to this for me would be kind of the apostolic nature of iconodulia. So this is a really actually good example of it insofar as I am not against icon veneration. You can't see them, but I've got a little prayer corner set up here where I've got a bunch of icons. I'm not even against icon veneration, as uncomfortable as that might be for some people, and that has been a change of mind. We could talk about that more, but I just don't actually think it's like an unbroken apostolic thing. I think it's a theological inference. I think it's a fair theological inference, and I think it's development. That is fine. And if we could say that, and I think Catholics might be slightly more comfortable with that, I think we'd be all fine and dandy. But when the Seventh Ecumenical Council begins to make claims of like, this has been passed down from the apostles, all of a sudden it's just like, I'm not really sure that's true. In some ways, I just wish these traditions wouldn't make quite as grand of claims, because then it would be much easier for me to assent to them. But once they become a bit more specific, a bit more historical, they have this evidentiary baggage to them, that's where it gets complicated for me. And that's where I feel like that non-resistant non-convert. I like these traditions. I would like to be able to say I could be Catholic or Orthodox in good faith, But I just don't think intellectually I can do that right now. Could that change one day? Absolutely, it could change. But for now, that's kind of where I'm at. And it's become this difficult thing. And I want to just relate to people who have been in this situation where they get excited about church history and they dive down and it's like, wow, there's so much beauty, truth, and goodness here. But maybe just not enough on the truth lens for them to make it over that hurdle. But all of a sudden, they've changed so much from where they came from. And I'm speaking about myself here as well. Like, I feel like a round peg in a square hole. And like within the non-denominational evangelical culture that I grew up in, I don't fit well there. I've changed too much. And the way I see church and kind of my more sacramental way of approaching things and my value for church history, all these things. And I could try to change my context to fit me, which is difficult and probably not going to happen too easily. But at the same time, I'm not Catholic enough. Like, I'm not actually Catholic or Orthodox, so I don't fully fit in there as much as I enjoy that. So you become kind of like ecclesially homeless, which isn't a good thing to be long term. And just in terms of what I do, like, I still attend those more low church things. And while there's aspects of it that don't fit well with me, like it works for my family and that of me and Eliza, it's where I grew up, and it's kind of the fallback. And I think there's a lot of good that's happening there, a lot of beauty, a lot of people that are experiencing life change there. And so I stay there because I don't think it's a good thing to be truly ecclesially homeless and not go to church at all. That is an absolutely not good option. But that's where I'm at today. And I know people ask a lot, and so why haven't I become Catholic? Why haven't I become Orthodox? It's underwhelming, but it's simply because I haven't become convinced. And I feel that now it felt like an analytic journey towards like a concrete truth. Increasingly feels like if I ever did convert, I mean, I would have to change my mind on these things, but I think it would kind of be a preference thing. Like I would say, yes, I think it's more true. I think the claims are better, but ultimately this is what I want, not this is the one true way that I can prove to you in a syllogism. Maybe I should have always expected it to be this way. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it really is as simple as I just don't have enough information. But time will tell, and that's where I'm at today. So I appreciate you guys being along for the journey. The journey continues, and who knows where it'll lead. But what I do trust is that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And so seeking truth, as difficult and as murky and as frustrating as that can be at times, I think is ultimately a pursuit of Christ. And so I trust that this will lead me closer to him and not further. Thanks for listening.